The Tragic Journey of Mehbuba, an Ethiopian slave story. In the sun-drenched highlands of Ethiopia, a young girl named Mehbuba lived a life of innocence and simplicity. Her name, meaning beloved, reflected the warmth of her family's embrace and the community that surrounded her. She was a girl of striking beauty and a spirited soul, with dreams as vast as the rolling hills of her homeland. But those dreams would be shattered, and her life forever altered by the forces of greed, power, and human cruelty. The day everything changed. Mehbuba's village, like many in 19th-century Ethiopia, was vulnerable to the predations of slave traders who prowled the region in search of human cargo. One fateful day, her village was raided. Chaos erupted as men on horseback descended, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Families were torn apart, homes set ablaze, and lives reduced to commodities. Mehbuba, barely in her early teens, was captured. Shackled and terrified, she was forced to march for days toward the coast, her feet blistered and her spirit battered. The journey was grueling, marked by hunger, illness, and the cries of others who shared her fate. Her eyes, once filled with hope, now reflected despair as she reached the bustling slave market of Zanzibar, one of East Africa's busiest hubs for human trafficking. Sold to a stranger. In Zanzibar, Mehbuba was paraded before potential buyers, her youth and beauty making her a prized possession. Among those who noticed her was Albrecht Roscher, a young German traveler and explorer. Driven by a mix of curiosity and the colonial fascination with exotic cultures, Roscher purchased Mehbuba and decided to bring her to Europe. For Mehbuba, this marked the beginning of a journey into an entirely alien world. She boarded a ship that carried her far from the African shores she had known, across oceans to a cold, unfamiliar continent. A stranger in Europe. When Mehbuba arrived in Germany, she became both a symbol of exoticism and a silent witness to the complexities of 19th-century global power dynamics. In her new surroundings, she was neither fully accepted nor entirely ignored. People were fascinated by her dark skin, her Ethiopian origins, and the stories Roscher told of how he had rescued her. But beneath the surface of this fascination lay Mehbuba's isolation. She struggled to adapt to the strange food, the freezing climate, and the foreign language. Her status was ambiguous. Was she a servant, a companion, or merely a possession? To Roscher, she may have been an object of curiosity, but to herself, she remained a displaced girl mourning the loss of her family, her homeland, and her freedom. The curtain falls. Mehbuba's health began to deteriorate within months of her arrival in Europe. The harsh winter was unforgiving to her fragile body, already weakened by the trauma she had endured. She contracted tuberculosis, a disease that was widespread in Europe at the time but particularly devastating for someone in her condition. Despite attempts to save her, Mehbuba succumbed to her illness in 1859. She was likely no older than 16. Roscher mourned her death, but for Mehbuba, it was the end of a life marked by unimaginable suffering and loss. Her legacy lives on. Mehbuba was laid to rest in Germany, far from the land of her birth. Her grave, a simple and somber reminder of her brief life, has drawn attention over the years as a symbol of the human cost of slavery. For Roscher, her story was perhaps one of intellectual curiosity. For the world, however, Mehbuba's life represents the countless untold stories of those who were stolen from their homes and forced into lives of servitude. Her journey, from the Ethiopian highlands to the slave markets of Zanzibar, across oceans to Europe, encapsulates the brutal realities of a global system of exploitation. But it also speaks to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring need to remember and honor those who suffered in silence. Remembering Mehbuba. Mehbuba's story is not just a relic of history, it is a call to reflect on the legacies of slavery and the humanity of those whose lives were overshadowed by it. Her name, beloved, reminds us that behind every statistic, every historical account, there is a person, a life that mattered, a story worth telling.